Welcome to progeCAD Basics for Beginners. This is modifying your geometry. To find links to any downloadable resources available for this video, make sure to check the description box below. Now that you have some of the basics down regarding simple geometry and drafting precision, it's time to learn about some of the most basic editing functions. Everything we'll be talking about in this video can be found in the Modify panel of the Home tab of the ribbon. Again, I'll be using a new blank drawing for this session. As you can see, I've turned off the grid as that's my preference, and I am using endpoint, midpoint, center, quadrant, intersection, and perpendicular as my running entity snaps. Let's put in a couple of objects to play with. I'll create a rectangle and then place a circle centered on its upper left corner. That should get us started. First up is the Move command. This is also a good time to bring up progeCAD's tooltips. When you hover over a ribbon icon, a brief tooltip will appear telling you the basics of what the command does. But if you continue to hover for 2 seconds more, an extended tooltip will appear, often showing exactly how the command works. Please keep this in mind as you continue your journey into progeCAD and into more complicated commands. I'll start by moving both the circle and rectangle to the right a bit. I'll launch the command, and keeping an eye on either the dynamic input prompt or the command line, I see that I'm prompted to select entities. I'll use a crossing window, but any selection method that we've discussed will work. Press Enter on the keyboard to end selection mode, or if you're like me, pop the spacebar with your thumb. Move needs a base point to move from and a second point to move to. I'll pick 2 random points in space to demonstrate. Let's do another move. This time, let's move the circle from one corner to another by using E-snaps. I'll launch the command, use a pick box to select my circle, and press Enter. My start point will be the corner of the rectangle, but I could also use the center of the circle. As I begin dragging the circle to the opposite corner, make note of the dashed yellow rubber band line indicating the path and a preview of the entity being copied. I'll acquire the endpoint of the rectangle, select it, and the circle will move and the command ends. Our next command is Copy, and it's very similar to Move. The steps of launching it, entity selection, base point, and second point are all the same. One difference is that Move ends once the second point is selected, but Copy will continue until you exit it. Let's see it in action. I'll pan over so that my entities are to the left, and then launch the command. Using a crossing window, I'll select both. First is my base point. I'll just choose a random point, move my cursor to the right, and select a random displacement point to the right of the original entities. Since I'm still in the command, I'll place another copy next to the first. Now I'll press Enter to exit. Next up is Rotate. I'll erase the copies I just made and pan back over so that the 2 entities are centered up. Again, launch the command, select your entities, and select a base point. I'll use my endpoint E-snap to select the lower left corner. I'll move my cursor over and up some, and you'll see the rubber band line and preview. I can enter an angle or select a point. To mix things up, I'll type in 30. I'll click the undo icon in the QAT to get it back how it was. Rotate has a couple of options you need to know about. I'll redo what I just did, but stop at the angle or the second point. Notice that the dynamic prompt has a down arrow and the command line shows options. I'll click the down arrow key to show the pull down and see my 2 options. The first is Copy. If I select it and continue with a second point or angle, I'll get a copy of the original entities. The other option to rotate is Reference. To best show this, I'll rotate my entities up a few degrees and draw a line at a random down angle. My task is to rotate the 2 entities so that the bottom of the rectangle is the same angle as the line. That's a difficult thing to do without rotating by reference. I'll get back to the options pull down and choose Reference. This is also a good example of watching your prompts carefully. First is your reference angle, or in our case, the bottom of the rectangle. You can type it in if you know it, but I don't, So I'll click the left lower endpoint of the box, then the right endpoint. progeCAD calculates that angle for you, then prompts for a new angle. Again, you can type it in if you know it, but if not, select a point on the desired angle. Here I'm using my endpoint eSnap to specify the line I drew. Again, I'll undo until I get my previous entities back. Next is the Scale command. It has the same two options as Rotate. You can choose to make a copy of your selected entities, or use a reference link to define how much to scale. Everything else works the same as the commands we've seen, except for the expected scale value. That is a scale factor, not a length or angle. A scale factor of 2 will make your entities twice as big, while a scale factor of 0.5 will make them half as big. I'll enter that now as my example. Finally, let's look at the Mirror command. With it, after selecting your entities, you'll be prompted for the start of a mirror line. I'll choose a point just to the left of my box, then it wants the end of the mirror line. As I move my cursor down, you can see the rubber band line showing us where the mirror line would be, and the projected result. I'll turn on ortho mode with the F8 key and select my second point. Next, the Mirror command gives you the option of keeping or deleting the original entities. I'll accept the default of no, and the command will exit, leaving me with mirrored entities. You can find out more information, download their 30-day free trial, or purchase your own progeCAD license at www.progecad.com.